Hello, I'm Jernine Russell, back with another episode of Purpose Driven Life. This is one of the favourite places of mine, my little home, my comfort zone, not kind of. But we are back with another guest today. And I just feel like really honoured that in my life, I get to meet people in different environments, different events that I go to, and I'm just really grateful that I got to meet this man. And I know that God is setting something up. I don't know what it is that he's setting up, but whenever I meet people, I always feel like, okay, this is a godly alignment. And I do feel like that about my guest. I am here because I got a tap on the shoulder in March 2021. And my dad, aka God, said, I want you to have conversations with people about purpose. And like I do, I was like, ugh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go in front of the camera. I don't want to do any of this. But then I had to be obedient, and that's why I'm here. So we are doing this to help people who may not be walking in their purpose, who may be at a standstill or a difficult period of their life, a transition, not sure what they want to do. And this is to help you to hear what other people have done, how they've come to walk in their purpose. And that's what we're here to do. I'm all about helping other people, blessing other people, and just hopefully there's something you hear today that will help you to make a new step in a new direction. I don't know. So without further ado, I will let my guest introduce himself.
Hiya, my name's Dez Brown. I wear various different hats, but I suppose part of me being here today is, and how we met, is I'm the founder and CEO of a charity called Spark to Life, which stands for Sharing Positive and Relevant Keys to Life. And we work primarily with young people, aged between 10, even up to the age of 25. And some of our projects are actually going a little bit older now. That we look at two roles in our work with young people. One is prevention. From young people getting caught up in kind of negative influences, stroke, worst case scenario, the criminal activity. And then we do intervention for those that are caught up in that lifestyle. Our role is very much to work with them, to give them other opportunities and what we would call therapeutic mentoring, journeying with them, looking at their whole person, as it were, body, soul and spirit. Being there as a significant other to journey with them through life choices and challenges. And, the work, which I'm sure will come up in some of our conversation when we look at purpose anyway, and I'll share more, but it covers various different strands across 9 boroughs in London. We've got about 30 full-time employees, various different sessional workers, volunteers, etc. But I won't go into that detail yet.
That is an amazing organisation. I've worked collectively with Spark to Life in my different various roles that I've had. So I know it well, and always a bit personal because of I grew up in Waltham Forest, and I don't know. There's always like a heart space, when an organisation is doing something in the area that you grew up in as well. So yeah. I think I love what you're doing. And I know a lot of people who work and who have worked in your organisation that always speak really highly of you as well.
Okay,
so that's always good to know as well.
That's encouraging. Yeah, that is.
Like normally when you leave a job, you're like, wow, that person. But people always speak really highly of you. So that is good. So I'm going to ask you some questions about purpose. Just going to hear more about kind of what you're doing and kind of why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
So the first question is, what does purpose mean to you?
Okay, I think depending on one's worldview, and I say that because one of the things I didn't share is prior to, the founding of Spark to Life was while I was a youth pastor in a church, which is a ministry of religion. And it was a project initially. So my worldview was very much shaped by my faith. Which then obviously influenced my moral compass, what's right and wrong, the decisions I made, etc. And so when I think about purpose, I suppose one of the points is, why am I here? Mm-hmm. And for somebody who has a worldview that is shaped by faith, often that will then relate to, well, you know, God's created me, I'm here for a purpose. So as I would often say to people, if we wanted to know the purpose of a chair or a table or a microphone, you kind of go back to the creator, the person who created it, and you say, well, why did you create this? And so with the worldview of faith, my first question for me is, you know, going back to my creator and saying, okay, why have you created me? And that therefore defines my purpose. And so for me, it's very much about loving people and loving God. And my ability to love people is through my relationship with God. Mm-hmm. And ultimately that is to acknowledge that God is a creator, he's worthy. And out of that, and knowing him and being in relationship with him, I'll find out why I am here. Which then I think, taking away the kind of spiritual lens, looking at it humanistically, it's looking at, well, what is my role? Mm. What is it I'm passionate about? You know, if we turned up at a meeting and, you know, my question would be, well, what is my purpose in this meeting? What is my role? What is it I'm called to do? What is it I have to do? Yeah. And so when I think about my purpose, I look at, you know, aspects of things that I'm passionate about, things that I enjoy, things that get me up in the morning. And I think one of the big things for me when we think about purpose, and I know some of the questions will lead us into other areas, I'm sure, is about, would I do what I'm doing for nothing?
Yes.
Do you get what I mean? You know, and I think sometimes if we're not careful in life, there's certain things that drive us.
Yes, that's so true.
Some things is money. And so we end up doing things for money, but we're not happy.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of people.
Yeah. And so for me, it's about all of those questions begin to kind of unpeel the layers of purpose. Why am I here? What am I doing? Should I be doing this? Should I not? And so I think it's a wide question, which I'm sure we'll kind of focus in as we go through the discussion. But ultimately, you know, why am I here? And what role do I have to play while I am here?
Mm. I love that. And I say this all the time. I've been doing this for 2 years.
Yeah. Nobody
has given the same definition of purpose.
Okay.
Which I find very interesting because in a dictionary, it's got a definition of purpose. But yet everybody's got their own kind of approach and way that they want to define or are able to define it, which I love. I love that. So what is your purpose?
Okay, I think, again, for me, very much knowing that I'm a child of God, created by God, I see myself definitely serving God, loving God. But I think I'm very much people-driven, not task-driven. And I think when we ask ourselves that question, it's looking, you know, what is, I suppose, the things that, I suppose the point that I'm coming to is about being self-aware. That journey of exploring self, understanding self. One of the things I trained in and I qualified in a number of years ago was a person-centered therapist. And so when you study around being a therapist, you've got to ask yourself a lot of questions.
Yes.
And that journey of being self-aware, that journey of asking the why in how you feel, in how you interact, in the decisions that you make, in stuff that's gone on in your past that has shaped the way that you are. I think all of that feeds into, to some degree, our purpose. There's this concept that I learned called SHAPE. And SHAPE stands for spiritual gifts. What's your spiritual gift? Or what's your special gift?
Yeah.
Again, taking away the spiritual lens. And then you're looking at H, which is your heart's desire. What's your heart's desire? A is for your ability, P is for your personality, and E is for your experience. And so you see these intersections of different encounters, different experiences. What is our personality? You know, there's kind of the Myers-Briggs, there's the Enneagram. There's various different tools that people can use to try and understand self.
Yes.
But all of that then feeds into, am I people-driven, task-driven? You know, and I think when you look at all of those intersections concerning, you know, for me, again, spiritual gift is very much around leadership, love building team, you know, very passionate around criminal justice or social justice, and criminal justice being one of the areas, wanting there to be a sense of moral uprightness, wanting to advocate, passionate around mental health and the impact that mental health can have on people. etc. So all of those things, a lot of which will come out of my own experiences, begin to shape what I see my purpose as here. But I think the foundation of that, and this is something that I would stress for me, is why do I do what I do? And for me, it's very much about what God has done for me. And I see what God is doing through me. And that's because I believe, because of my worldview, which I think is a conversation worth having, because I think that shapes a lot of people's reference points.
Definitely.
You know, if somebody doesn't believe in God, and there's nothing wrong with that in essence, but they will probably believe in self, they'll have values, and those values will determine what they see as right and wrong, and what they see as right and wrong will determine where they fit within the world. And for me, I see it very much rooted in my relationship as a Christian with God.
I love that.
Yeah.
I wasn't, you know what, you touched on shape, and Purpose Driven Life, the book,
Yes.
is where I read that.
Yes.
And that's why it's called Purpose Driven Life, because that book for me was something that in a particular time of my life, I just needed to work out, am I doing the right thing?
Yeah. What's
You
your
know?
shape? Where do you fit within the picture?
Yes. And I remember writing the acronym, but the fact that you can remember that is just, I take my hat off to you, because I have to write these things down and read them over and over again for it to stay in my memory bank now. But yeah, that was definitely something that I read, and something that I found really helpful along my own journey of trying to find out where I am at, who am I, what am I supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
Is this in line with what God has called me to do?
Yes.
Because I think sometimes we can do things and get like in that routine of it, and then but you have to keep questioning yourself.
You do, and I think, there's different seasons.
Yes.
And there's different times and times in our life that will determine whether this is the shape that fits into that picture. Because I think the interesting thing about, once we find our purpose, the picture becomes clearer. I think, we've all done puzzles where you try to put a piece and it doesn't fit.
Yes.
It kind of nearly fits, but it doesn't. It feels awkward. Do you get what I mean?
Such an amazing analogy.
But do you get what I'm saying?
I
And
do
think
get it. So I like puzzles as well.
Yeah, this is it. And I think once you find yourself not fitting properly, it distorts the picture.
Yes.
And I think as humans, we all have a part to play in the picture. I think what's also interesting when you're talking about analogies is when you look at something like tapestry and you look at the picture from the outside, it looks beautiful. But what I think sometimes we don't appreciate is the work that's gone on behind the scenes, and it's messy. And so when you look at the back of a tapestry, you see all the loose threads, all the knots. And if you was to show that as the picture, people wouldn't understand what the picture is, because it looks a mess.
Yes.
But when you turn it around and you look at it from front on, and you see, the craftsmanship, the beauty, and that's how I see that God deals with us. That often behind what we present, there's a lot of mess that brings us to where we are. If people knew the journey that I've gone through to be where I am, they might appreciate the picture, a founder, a director, or shall I say, a CEO of a charity. They may celebrate those points, but, they won't necessarily know the journey.
Yeah. And I'm all about the journey.
All about the journey.
And when you was talking about the tapestry, I actually was doing the pilot in the prison in Peterborough.
Right.
And we went to this huge cathedral in the middle of Peterborough's town centre.
Yeah.
And the women were doing tapestry.
Right. Yeah.
This was like only in July. So the fact that you used that thing was like, oh my gosh. And they were hand sewing. And I said to the ladies, how long have you been doing this? They've been doing it for 7 years.
Wow.
And they're not even nearly finished.
Wow. Look at that.
But when you said it as well, it made me think of, oh my gosh, like I'm a whole mess that God has just come and like slowly has put this piece together.
This masterpiece.
It is a master. I am a masterpiece because I'm his masterpiece.
Exactly.
And sometimes we have to remind ourselves of that. Like, an artist, it takes a long time to create a piece of work that is beautiful and wonderful. You don't see the actual, if we looked at the beginning, I don't know, some artists just paint straight onto the thing. Some people use pencil. Everyone's got their way of dealing with it. But I just so eloquent in how you kind of describe that. And I'm quite a visual. I told you this before, that I'm very visual. So when you said the tapestry, I thought, oh my gosh, yes. And for the young people that might not even know what tapestry is.
Yeah, well, hopefully it'll help just to assimilate
look it up.
people's thinking. Yeah, definitely.
Yes. So your purpose is, it sounds very multifaceted.
It is, I think when I was heavily involved in ministry, one of the things I realised, I was a great starter, not a good finisher. Great at starting something and building team.
Yes.
So one of the things I see myself as being able to do, and I think it's really important realising what we're good at and what we're not good at. I think it was, there's this true story around, I think it was the Chinese table tennis players, and way back, hence I'm kind of reference the year. They're phenomenal at backhand, and they would always win on their backhand. And I think there was asked one time, why don't you practice on your forehand? And the point was, well, why practice on our forehand when our backhand's so good?
Wow.
And so, there's various different concepts around development and leadership that if you're a 5 out of 10 in something, even if you put a lot of energy and effort in, you'll probably only come to about 6 or 7. Well, if you're really good at something like a 8 or 9 and you kind of harness and develop that skill, you can be excellent in it. And it's about majoring in what you're good at, celebrating what you're good at, and not seeing something that you're not good at as a weakness, but you surround yourself with people that are good at those things, hence the importance of team. So I really am passionate about team. I'm passionate about leadership. I'm passionate about social justice. And I think when I was in ministry, I realised my role was very much having a portfolio of different things I was doing. So no longer had I started something, I thought about something else. And so if I was to give a name or a title, there's probably 2 strap lines I would use. One is a cultural architect in my thinking, and another one I would say would be a social entrepreneur. So looking at the kind of social landscape and thinking of innovation and creative ideas in addressing some of the issues that we find in society.
Yes.
And so they're the kind of things that I would say get me up, keep me passionate, keep me motivated. But one thing I've also realised, I work better in team.
Yes.
There's this saying I have, and many people have probably heard it before, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah.
And it's surrounding yourself with people that are better than you at certain things, but knowing where your strength is.
Definitely.
I
feel like what you just said is so poignant for someone so close to me. Like I just felt, anyway, he'll get to watch it. But I was just like, no, he will. He has
He's
to.
Gonna be watching
he
this.
has to watch this. So that kind of gives an idea. But I'm just like, wow. Because what you described just sounded like my husband is a leader. Like very, very good. Always got these innovative ideas and you just been able to articulate it in a way that then helps him in his journey forward.
Yeah. Well,
Because
hopefully if he listens, this will encourage you.
He will listen to this. But yeah, I think that's really helpful. Really helpful. And we don't have enough great leaders. We have some people who think they can lead.
Yeah.
And they don't do it well. And then that has consequences for the team. I've been in teams, like in work and things that I do, and think, oh my gosh, this team could work. Like there's some amazing people in this team. If we had the right leader, we could go really far. And then I've also seen the other side of it, and having an amazing leader and how you can get the best out of people when you have a great leader.
Yes, 100%.
So that's amazing. I love that. How did you know that being a cultural architect, and a social entrepreneur, how did you know that these were parts of your purpose?
I think, for me, being somebody that studies more than reads, and I say that for a reason, because I've had hundreds, if not thousands of books in my time, and people say, have you read all of them? The answer is no. I'm more of a studier than a reader, and that's studying people, listening, if I was to read a book, I usually take the guts out of the book, then read it from cover to cover. Just the way that I process information. And my personality type's very much like that. And so you learn concepts as you journey in life. And as you get older, you begin to see where you're well placed and where you fit best. And you're also doing, for me anyway, a lot of self-reflection, a lot of, okay, you know, where do I feel fulfilled? And there's certain like milestones in one's life or landmarks, whether it's, you know, an age that we've reached, whether it's a transition in job or career, and it's those, or something happens within the family, you know, or within one's life that's quite significant.
Yeah.
And it causes us to ask questions about, am I doing what I want to be doing? Am I doing what I should be doing? Am I fulfilling my purpose, et cetera, et cetera? And I think it's at those kind of milestones, those junctures, I've asked the question and realised I'm passionate about social justice. I do feel that the gift and the grace of my life is bigger than, and this is by no means being disingenuous to a geographical, and I'm being specific in what I'm saying, church in a building. You know, I think it was a futurist once said, the church has influence. If the church was to go and everyone was to be asking, where's that church? That's only when it's got influence. But if a church was to disappear and no one asks because no one recognised or realised it was there, it has no influence. I think it was Mal Fletcher, a futurist, that mentioned, and again, my words, not his, he probably put it a lot more eloquent than me. And the reason I say that is because, you know, having served in church and been shaped by church, which was phenomenal, I always had a passion for outside in the four walls, you know, outside the four walls, in secular space, for want of a better term.
Definitely.
And I think with my own lived experience of going through the criminal justice system when I was younger, and that was part of the journey of leading to my conversion, and seeing how the grace of God has outworked in such a way that it's, you know, there's this scripture that says, you know, your gift will make room for you and bring you before great men, great women. I've seen that I've had the opportunity in many things to influence, to speak into, and it's about how we manage that. And so when you begin to influence leaders or influence thinkers, you begin to influence structures, systems, and hence you become more of a cultural architect, because an architect draws a picture. And what you want to be able to do is influence how that picture's drawn. How is society going to outwork? How's the criminal justice going to outwork? How's the areas within mental health or mental ill health or leadership? How's that all going to be outworked in our society? And I think I'm a great believer. You've got to be in the room to bring value. There's no sense standing outside screaming and shouting, which means sometimes you tolerate where you are because you know there's a bigger picture.
Definitely.
You know, and as a leader, it's understanding where you influence. You don't always lead from the front. Sometimes you lead from the middle. Yeah. Sometimes you lead from the back. So it's knowing where you should be leading from, what influence you bring, and seeing how that becomes, for me anyway, a cultural architect in this space, and trying to shift, you know, because culture is the way that people think and the way that people behave. So if we're going to influence the way that people think and the way that people behave, depending on what sphere or area that we're in, that to me is influence. And if we can do that in a way that's significant around systems and decisions, then ultimately, hopefully, we become a cultural architect.
You know what I love? I love the way that you've just described that, but also, you know, the term influencer. You know, these people that are on YouTube.
Yeah.
You know, I have a lot to say about influencers, like the ones who are on social media, but what are you actually, what it's rubbish. Like some of the things that they're, like I'm thinking of things that my son used to watch, of like children playing with toys or trying sweets or, and they've got millions of followers, but they're chatting absolute rubbish. And for me, you are an influencer because the influence that you are creating, that you're having, is powerful, it's positive, it's life-changing, it's world-changing. And that, to me, you are the definition of an influencer. So I don't even care whoever wants to come for me because you've got makeup or whatever. But, you know, for me, it's having an influence that's going to actually have ripples and leave a legacy.
Yeah, that kind of comes back, I think, to the first question about purpose, isn't it? It's about, you know, like you said, those people that they have an audience and they are influencing.
Yes, but what is it?
But what is it you're influencing?
Yes.
Do you get what I mean? And good, bad, and indifferent. I think, and similar, having, you know, children that when they were young, they would be, you know, watching certain influencers, whether it's opening up a toy and talking about that toy, but they've got, you know, they've got hundreds of thousands of people following them, and so for some people, their drive is money.
Yes.
You know, and it started off as an interest, it started off as a hobby, and then when they began to see, actually, I'm making money out of this, I need to focus on it. For them, it's money, I think, and I'm not saying that, and this is an interesting point, I'm not saying that, I mean, money is needed, definitely. But you know, one thing I've realised, this is me putting on my therapeutic hat, is purpose is more important than money.
Oh,
because
I think I'm just going to let you just drop the mic. That is definitely going to be one of the clips that we have to have, because I am an advocate of this. Like, I try to say this to people all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I know we need money.
We need money, 100%.
Come on, I'm not trying to live, like, I want to live a good life.
Yeah.
And it takes money to live and enjoy life.
Yes.
Free, with some level of freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah, not to worry and, you know.
Yeah.
So we need money. And I'm not saying that I don't need money.
Yeah.
But that doesn't drive me.
No.
Like, in all of the things that I've ever done in my life has been driven by what's in here and trying to help others or create change or impact people in a positive way. The money doesn't always come. I'm still waiting for the fruits of some of the things that I'm doing. Do you know what I mean?
100%.
But it doesn't stop me from doing it.
Yeah. And I think, you know, if you can have both, that's phenomenal.
Yes.
You know, you've reached your sweet spot. What I would say, though, is that there are some people that are gifted and graced to make money.
Yes.
The big point in that is what they use the money for.
And yes.
And that's down to, again, purpose. Because like we've said, there's nothing wrong in making money, but that shouldn't be the driver, full stop.
Definitely.
If I'm graced and gifted to make money, especially being a cultural architect, etc., it's about, okay, what can I use the money for?
Yes.
How can that bring change? How can that bring systemic change, life change?
That's it.
And again, that comes back down to purpose. So there's probably people that will listen to this that make money. And I want to celebrate that and acknowledge that. The big question is, am I content and happy with just making money? Or do I feel that there's a bigger reason, a bigger purpose? And I think we know that once crisis hits our world, once challenges hit our world. And sometimes that can be circumstantial, or that could be emotional, psychological.
That is, oh my God.
And then we're asking the question, actually, what is life about? What is my purpose? What am I doing?
That sent shivers
Do you get
down
what I mean?
my body. Yes, because I do. And I think I'm thinking of what the reason of the shivers are probably because I've experienced both of those. Yes, and I can relate, and it resonates and hits quite deeply. But then that can also remind you of what you're doing, and what you're doing is right as well. Even when crisis comes, you know, I spoke to you just before we were filming, and you know, having a young person who I work with murdered has had a lasting effect on me, but then also changed the trajectory of my life to then, even when I try to run away from it, because at that point I was like, I'm done here. This is way too much. And you can run it. I feel like purpose would come and drag you by your neck and put you back.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do understand that. And I think COVID has definitely, I'm hoping that has had an impact on people not in all, like, okay, we've all been impacted, we've lost people and stuff. But when you do not have control, you can have how much millions in your bank account, but you cannot go out, you can't do anything, your loved ones are ill.
Yeah.
And that money can't change
Can't
that
change
they're
that.
ill.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like these things that have happened should be pushing us to think in a different way. I don't know if it has done with everybody, but
Yeah. And I think, there's I suppose what we call in the sector that we both work in, as in with young people, stroke criminal justice, is what they call teachable moments. And, COVID was a teachable moment in different ways, I think, as a nation, but also individually.
yes,
There's things that happen. You know that for those that may not be familiar with the Bible, there's these, especially in the Psalms, it uses the word Selah, which is to pause,
yes,
to think. And I think we have moments in life where it is a Selah moment,
yes,
where we need to pause, we need to think. There's stuff that happens in the world that is a teachable moment, that enables us. And this is why I think one of the points I made reference to is about self-awareness. Because we can either live on purpose or live by accident.
Wow.
And living on purpose basically means there's an intentionality behind why I do what I do.
Yep.
Whether it's habits, whether it's relationships, whether it's where I focus my time, my energy, etc. And I think there's a lot of people that will live just by accident, which means there is no purpose. And what I mean by that is we can look at the grander scheme of things. We wake up in the morning, we eat, we work, we build relationships, we get careers, we buy houses. And someone can say, well, isn't that purpose? Well, for some people it is, because but it's not intentional. It's by accident. It's what we're called to do. It's like we've been shaped to do this. Society has caused us to do these things, but that's not necessarily been intentional. That's not living on purpose. You go to school, and after school, if you're secondary school, you go do A-levels, from A-levels, uni, from uni you get a job, and that's not intentionality. That's society just feeding us, this is what we do, this is what we do. I'm not saying any of that's wrong. But where I think intentionality comes in, where I think self-awareness comes in, we begin to ask the questions, well, why? Why am I doing this? What is it all about? What is it for? And they're the bigger questions that I think can begin to help us find our shape and focus in what we're about as an individual, and ultimately what we're called to do.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. I have to have a breath there. But it's so true. And I think all of the things that you're talking about are things that I'm really passionate about. Like I'm really passionate about self-awareness, reflecting, having a pause, like an intentional pause. I say this to my friends all the time, like you need to take a moment. And sometimes if you don't take that moment, you're going to be forced to take that moment.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's only so much you can go and go and go and go and go until your body shuts down. And it's my couple of guests ago spoke about being intentional about your taking that time out. And I speak about it so much. I speak about it to my children. Sometimes you just need to just have some time.
Yeah.
I know you've got my daughter's studying for her mock exams at the moment. Yes, you do need to do revision, but you also need to rest.
Yes, 100%.
And it's trying to find that balance, I think. But yeah, I think the self-awareness is something that some people haven't mastered. And I don't think people know the importance of self-awareness. Yeah,
I agree. I think it's very important. And in all fairness, as I'm sure you would agree, it's a life journey.
Yes.
That we always have to be self-aware. And I think also, there's this term used, emotional intelligence. And just because I'm self-aware doesn't mean I'm emotionally intelligent. Which is another thing. Because I think self-awareness is about me understanding myself, whereas emotional intelligence is understanding how do I impact, good, bad, or indifferent, when I meet people and come into certain spaces. And if I can read the room, I'm now emotionally intelligent. If I can understand whether I'm being too loud or too confrontational, or I need to contribute something, I'm reading the room to say, okay, where do I fit into this space? And that's the emotional intelligence. And so there's that kind of moving from, and that's where leadership really helps in our growth and in our development, that as a leader, it's not only are we self-aware, but can we read the room? Are we emotionally intelligent? Because ultimately you're leading people. You know, I think it was John Maxwell said that if you think you're a leader and no one's following, you're just taking a walk. Do you get what I mean?
I like that.
Yeah. And I think it's for us to be aware of, we're only leading if people are following.
That's so true.
You know?
Yeah.
Because if no one's following, we're not leading.
But this is the other thing, because I'm using this to tie into social media, because people are following. But who are you following?
Yeah.
And it's something that I get really, really like, you are following, or you've got all these followers, but what are they following? The rubbish, the toy that you're unpacking.
Yeah.
Like, I always get really, like, I've got teenage daughters, and I'm like, you need to be mindful about the information that you're consuming. Yes. Because and is it a valuable source of information?
Yeah.
You know, that just because you saw it on YouTube doesn't mean that it's true.
Yeah.
Anybody can upload something onto YouTube.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it's the truth.
Yeah.
So you've decided to make this mask on your hair because you've seen it on YouTube. But where did they get that information from?
Yeah.
How do we know that those ingredients are going to be the right thing? So you need to know who you're following.
Yeah.
But this is why I decided to follow God.
Yeah. No, that's valid. 100%. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because that He's the way, the truth, and the life.
Yeah.
But it's trying to help other people to understand. Think about who you're following.
Yeah.
What you're following.
100%. Yeah.
Is it the right thing? Is it the right thing for you?
Yeah.
You know, you wouldn't, if you're allergic to nuts, you're not going to eat nuts, are you?
No way. Yeah.
So you need to work out, okay, is this the right thing? Is this right for my well-being?
And it's a challenge, but I hear you and I totally agree. And I think, you know, again, putting on my therapeutic hat, this is a psychology behind it. It's all around the psychology of how do I engage someone? And you know, there's a market for it. There's an appetite for it. And I think in a society where we are very much around consuming, and not necessarily asking the question, how healthy is this for us? And the challenge in part of that is, it's similar to, and I use the illustration, you know, whether people believe in it as a literal or as a metaphor, but you think of, you know, Adam and Eve in the garden, the day you eat of this fruit, you shall surely die. But they didn't die that day. So, you know, when we think about what we consume, it doesn't kill us today.
Yes.
It doesn't pull us down today. It doesn't destroy us today. Therefore, today is okay. And I think we don't often have that viewpoint to say, actually, me eating a little bit of this or me watching a little bit of this, that's of no benefit. What is the long-term impact in my psychology? And they look at things like that when media tries to capture people in the way of think. I mean, you look at, you know, algorithms, AI on social media, they watch what you're watching. They kind of keep a footprint of that, so they know what adverts to give you. So they're watching you, so they know how to engage you, entertain you. And I think, and unless we appreciate the psychology of it, we can't set those boundaries to say, I need a little bit of self-control here. Because none of it's harmful. Well, there are things that are, obviously, but it's about, okay, how do I manage myself?
Yeah.
How do I apply self-control? Because, you know, it's like saying alcohol's bad. For some people it is, but for the majority of us, it's fine, but we still need to have it in moderation. And so there's that sense that whatever we abuse or we indulge in, it can have a negative effect. And that's from, like you're saying, the simple things on the influence, the amount of time we waste. Do you get what I mean? It's not harmful what we're watching, but the amount of time we waste in watching stuff like that. But then it's one of those things we've got to ask ourselves, there's so much being presented to us. What are we choosing? And again, that comes down to well, who am I? What's my purpose?
Yeah.
Because my purpose will then determine what I'm going to give my time to and my energy to.
That is, yeah, that's a word right there.
You know?
Definitely. So tell us about the steps that you've taken to walk in your purpose.
I think we've talked about some of it, but it's definitely asking the questions, why do I do what I do?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even more recently, you know, I asked myself that question around Spark to Life. You know, we work across 9 different boroughs in London. We work with probation, youth offending teams. We work with schools. We reached over 10,000 young people last year. We worked with 870 young people one-to-one through therapeutic casework.
Wow.
You know, we do detached work on the streets. We do all of this. And my question in all of that, at different junctures, which is a weird question, why am I still doing this? You know, and that's not because there's a complete unrest, because there's not. But I've got to be very clear. There's loads of opportunities that are presented to me and to my charity.
Mm-hmm.
Invites to attend meetings, you know, invites to get involved in training, etc., etc., etc. So I'm always asking myself that question. And some of it is also looking at, well, where is the need?
Mm.
And so I look at where the gaps are within the system. And we are one of few Black-led organisations within the criminal justice space
Mm-hmm.
that turns over more than 1 million. That is actually speaking truth to power, addressing issues around racial disparity, whether it's in, you know, stop and search, whether it's in school exclusions, whether it's in prison incarceration, whether it's in mental ill health. And for me, that's quite significant, because where there is disproportionality, there needs to be services or a service that is speaking truth to power, that represents the very young people or stroke the cohort service users that are caught up in the system.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I ask myself all these questions and I see the need, I begin to see this is where my purpose lies. Because I'm about social justice. If there was loads of services or organisations out there doing it in that space of that size, that have levels of credibility, that have access to certain sectors, then you can say it's too crowded.
Mm.
But if there's few, then there needs to be more.
Yes.
You know, so I am asking myself those questions, and that helps me find purpose. And I think one of the big things at the moment, I'm looking about recruitment, you know, job opportunities for certain individuals that have made lifestyle choices that has affected certain opportunities. But I don't think our past should be our future. You know, I'm a living testimony of that. You know, and for those that may not know, just putting a context to it, I've got a book, Convicted or Condemned, and it's very much my true life story of being incarcerated as a teenager for taking someone's life. And literally everything looked bleak. There was no hope. I was very fortunate. I believe it was divine intervention, because I wasn't a young person of faith at that point. My family weren't of faith. But I come back to that term shape, and then the question you asked, you know, how do I know my purpose, and all of that is very much around, I believe our lived experience has a lot to say to that. You know, the person who started World Vision, they was queuing up and they were seeing the lack of provision for those that were in need. And they'd got on this mission and they'd done this, and they've seen there is a massive need here. And when they came back to the West, to America, they went to all the people that had loads of money. And they said, look, would you fund this cause? Because this is the need. And often it's where we see need and it aligns with our own values, our own passion, that we're driven to say, I need to do something.
Yeah.
And that thing that drives us becomes part of our purpose. And again, a very, you know, weak not analogy, but a weak overview of how World Vision started. But in short, and in simplistic terms, that's how he started. And this person then started World Vision. And I suppose when you think about why you do what you do.
I was sitting here thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a need. You're thinking,
Definitely.
are people clear on purpose? The importance of purpose.
Yeah. Do you know what? This particular aspect of my purpose this wasn't me.
Yeah.
I didn't want to, although I'd been on my own kind of exploratory journey of purpose for myself, I didn't think about it. It was literally God saying, speak to people about it.
Yeah.
I never sat down and thought, yes, I want to have a podcast. That's just never been one of my ambitions. But as a woman who has experienced different issues, self-confidence, self-worth, having a baby, and then losing a part of myself and not feeling like I could become me again. So there's different things on that journey. And so I'm very passionate about empowering women, young women, giving them a toolkit of how to navigate life.
Yeah.
And that's what that's when I look back, my company is called She Reigns. That's how I started it. I started doing events and encouraging women and empowering women. And that's how it started. And then it's evolved into Take the Reins, which is now the program that I devised with one of my friends. And it's literally the stuff that we were doing in the community that we're now trying to do in prisons.
Yeah.
And the passion for prison, I feel like prison is that Selah moment. I'm probably Selah. But that pause in different moments of different people's lives, we're forced to pause or we have to pause as a consequence of whatever.
Yeah, 100%.
But to me, there is something so significant about when somebody is in that space in prison that you can capture them.
Yeah.
There's a captive audience sometimes.
100%. Yeah.
So, and I don't know where I've got this, I've never been to prison, but I've always had this, real interest of prison. And maybe it's because my best friend when I was 15, he went to prison, and I just asked him all these questions, just intrigued. But I think it's a culmination of all of the different things that I've done. I've been a probation officer. I've had 3 children, and I've set up a company. I've written a book. There's all these things that I've had to overcome that I now want to just literally give somebody the reins to get on with what they need to do with their life. Yeah. So I guess that's how purpose doesn't always, I feel like it kind of finds you.
No, I think there's definitely
a lot of the time.
Yeah. And I think there's that moment when we realise this is what I'm passionate about, or this is what I find an interest in. And like you've shared clearly in your own journey, circumstances that led to that.
Definitely.
Your lived experience led you to make decisions.
Yes.
That now brings you here.
Yeah.
Doing this. Do you get what I mean? That you're finding your shape. And your shape, I really believe in life as a journey means that we will evolve at different aspects along that journey. So where it is now in 5 years' time,
exactly,
it's going to be somewhere different, maybe doing something different, but still very clearly with purpose.
Definitely. If I'm not living on purpose, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
There's things that I say no to, quite easily in my life, because I know that it doesn't fit in there.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that it helps me. It defines me. It gives me my lane.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like even, where I met you, going to the event, it's because it's something that I'm really passionate about. It's something that it's my time, it's my personal time, but I'm going to be a part of that conversation with an organisation who are not talking. I'm fed up of people talking.
Yeah.
I'm fed up of going or hearing people talk about, this person passed away, and okay, but how can I be involved in preventing another young person from dying?
Yes. Yeah. What are we doing? What's the solutions?
Do you understand what I mean? And it might not be. I've worked with young people for over 20 years, and I feel like I've played my part in it. But even at this particular, now I'm a mum and I've got a different hat that I'm wearing, I can still contribute so valuably.
Yes. Yeah.
And maybe it's in a more strategic way now. Maybe I don't have not saying I've still got energy, but I don't enjoy so much that kind of everyday, I don't think I would go back to working in a youth vending team, having a caseload anymore. But I feel like what I have inside and my experience can now be used in a different way.
100%. Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm trying to do now. Utilize this wisdom and this experience in a different way.
Yeah.
And maybe it might be helping up the young people that have got the energy and the vigor to go and do that direct work. Maybe it's helping them.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Maybe it's the supervision aspect, because I know how important supervision is for people doing that direct work.
Yes. Yeah.
Self-care, speaking, helping them to, I don't want them to ever experience what I've experienced.
Yeah.
So there's things that I've learned how to look after myself that may be valuable to help them.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is or what it looks like. So we have done a whistle stop tour of all of this purpose, all of your purpose. But there's somebody out there who may be struggling, may not have worked out what their purpose is. What advice would you give them?
I think two angles. One would be, and I'm speaking now, I suppose, as someone who has a worldview that God is a creator, and everyone's created with a purpose. That's the first thing I would say. So as much as one can ask themselves the question, why am I here? What is my value? Stroke, what is my purpose? I can assure you that you are created with a purpose. My analogy that I shared from the very beginning, if we're going to know our purpose, we need to go and ask the creator, why did you create me? So that's one route of finding out about, okay, God, why did you create me? Why am I here? For me, I've reduced it to two simple things, but that's been a journey of understanding through my relationship with God that I'm here to love God and love people. And it's more than that, but that's a simple strapline. It actually talks about in Matthew 22, 37. It talks about, the greatest command. And if you fulfill these two, you fulfill all the commands, as it were. I think the other thing, looking at it from a humanistic, very natural point of view, I think it's looking at what you're good at. What is it that you're passionate about? What is it that gets you up in the morning? What is it that you would do for free in an ideal world? You had all the money in the world, and you're thinking, okay, you've traveled, you've got everything you want. Where would you spend your energy? And we've spoken myself. I've spoken very much, shall I say, about what I'm called to do and helping people. But, some people are called to create, to design. And there's different ways. And so it's not necessarily about being people-driven. It could be task-driven. You're there to support in the background. You're there to, it's not about necessarily setting something up that's, big and you're the lead. Because you might say, well, I don't feel myself or see myself as a leader. And all of this really is about asking ourselves the questions. It is that self-awareness. It is asking ourselves questions about what is it that makes us tick? What is it that gets us up in the morning? Are we an introvert, an extrovert, an ambivert? What is our Myers-Briggs? What is our Enneagram? All these things doesn't define specifically what our purpose is, but it begins to help us ask that question. And it's about us exploring those points. And so they're the pointers or the points of encouragement that I would say to anyone that's listening, that's thinking, okay, what is my purpose? From a spiritual point of view, go back to the Creator. If you're saying, well, look, I'm not somebody who's of faith, and even if you are, I still feel those other tools, even from a humanistic point of view. There's that whole thing around self-actualization. I want to be the best me. I'm not humanist in any way, but I believe in humans, and I believe in the human race, and I believe in people being the best that they can be. So I would be saying for those individuals, it is around, asking the question, what is your meaning? What is it that you can do? What is it that gets you up? What is it that gets you passionate, etc.? And ultimately, I think the concept of shape, and I'll land on this just to remind people, is helpful. It is spiritual gift or special gift, if you want to take away the spiritual element. It is your heart's desire. It is your abilities. It is your personality, and it is your experience. All of that makes your shape. And that's hopefully, if you can answer a lot of all those questions, you begin to see where do you fit in this world and in this time and in this place.
I feel like there's some homework that people have got to do now,
Oh, yeah.
which is good. If you're into that kind of thing, all of the things that you spoke about, I've done every single one of them.
Okay.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
when you hit crisis
Mm.
or you've hit that low thing
Mm.
and you need to kind of get yourself back,
Yes.
there's tools that different people that I've met have kind of said, oh, try this or do this.
Yeah.
Therapy is one of the ones that I advocate the most for. That has been so life-changing, so transformative.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of people who are Christian or who go to church might not believe in therapy, but I am an advocate of God and therapy together. Like those two, the combination of them, like literally life-changing.
Yeah, I agree as a therapist sitting here.
Yeah, for me, those are the things. If anyone asks me, the two things that changed me and changed my life, obviously, first is God, or should I say rediscovering God and having a having a relationship is so important.
So important, yeah.
Because that means that I changed, like I used to journal a lot, and when I first started journaling, I used to like they're letters to God almost. And I kind of feel like one day when I'm not here, those letters can be published or whatever they want to do. Like Anne Frank, it'll be Janine's diaries or whatever.
Yeah.
But when I started writing to God, it started off with like, dear God or dear Heavenly Father. And the more that our relationship grew, the terminology of how I reference to him. So now it's Dad.
Okay, yeah.
And it changed. And I can see, if I look back in the years, how it's changed and how the communication, like when you're comfortable with somebody, you can be at ease, you can be free. Like, most people know me. No, not a lot of people know me. Like my close people call me Jernine. No, they call me Jay. My name is Jernine. Nobody says it properly.
Yeah.
So then they just say Jernine.
Yeah.
And so that's like work. People that don't know me that well, my closer people might call me Jay. And then like the ones like my dad, Jen. Like that's the real. So I know where that person is in my life, depending on how they reference me.
Yes. Yeah.
So he is my dad because that is my person that I go to for everything.
Yes. Yeah.
That is my person that's teaching me, that's leading my life and directing me. He's my comfort as well. So I saw the transition of how I reference to him. And even like how I decided like to do this wasn't something, as I said, wasn't something comfortable. But because he asked me, I have to do it. I don't even know what the reason is.
Yeah.
It hasn't really manifested. It hasn't got millions of views yet. But if it can influence or impact or do whatever it is that he created the purpose of this for, I continue to do it.
100%. Yeah.
So the purpose doesn't have to make sense to us. But then he asks me, so it makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's powerful. I think when you think about that, being somebody who appreciates kind of theology, psychology, to some degree, happy to talk about philosophy. It's true, sometimes we can be, we've talked about purpose and being very clear on what we're called to do. But there are things that actually, if we're living in obedience or we understand a real sense of, no, I need to do this. Sometimes we don't know everything.
Yes.
But if God does, and we're confident that God does, then we can be obedient. And the bigger picture will unfold. And one of the things I'd say on that, one of the things that stood out to me that I often think about, there's a difference between influence that adds or influence that multiplies. And I think when we look at some of the things that are deemed as influence, they add.
Yes.
So if I'm speaking to 100 people, the big challenge on influence is if I speak to 100 people and out of that 100 people, 10 people speak to 100 people, now I'm moving into multiplication.
Yes.
And I think even when we look at the text, Jesus had 12 disciples. Yeah. I'm not sure how he would have been on social media nowadays. Because we could think, well, he had the crowds.
Yes,
the crowds
he
are
did.
fickle. They come and go.
Yes, they do.
Do you get what I'm saying? But it's the core group that's around you that actually they went and then influenced hundreds and hundreds and thousands, etc., etc. So I think when we look at influence, it's not how many people necessarily are following us, because you can have one person following you, but that one person has a reach of millions.
That's so true.
So you're multiplying now. And the reason they've got that reach of millions is because they're listening to you. And I think we never really know how much influence we have.
It's so true.
You know, especially, and that's why I think one of the leadership principles is moving away from addition to multiplication. And that's leading leaders. Because leaders lead hundreds, if not thousands of people. And coming back to the, social media stuff and the toys and whatnot, they're influenced. They're adding. They look at their counts.
Yes.
But how many people multiply? And I think I'm about multiplication.
Yes.
Influencing influencers or influencing leaders that have scope in different realms. Yeah.
So powerful. So powerful. I feel like we could have been here for hours.
Yeah. Likewise. And I can
Yes.
talk as well, when we get into these things. Yeah. And some good questions.
But I just want to say thank you. It's been a teaching moment. It's been a reflection moment. There's been a lot of things that I watch back these as well, actually, because
Okay. Yeah.
and at different points of seasons of my life I watch different ones.
Yeah.
This one I always watch it back just to see how it flows and whatever, but this is going to be one that I think I have to literally, I'm a note taker as well, to help me to remember things. But yeah, there's so much that you've shared that has been helpful for me, and I know it's going to definitely bless other people. But I just want to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
And on all different levels, not just in your organisation, in your church, in your family, in just the conversations. Even the day that you approached me was like, I was saying it to my husband, I've always been I feel like I'm an introverted extrovert.
Ambivert, yeah.
Ambivert,
Yeah.
right? I know the term now. But if anyone describes me, they'll say I'm very sociable, right? But there's things that's happened to me and in my life that has changed that a little bit. I was saying to my husband today, my son wants to try this new athletics, and I will take him, but I really I don't struggle, but I don't like having to go to those new things anymore. I used to be really good and like just go and not think about it. So when I came to the event, it's the first time that I've done that for a really long time. And I could feel myself, because I'm not a person that will go on my phone, but I was that day, I was on my phone trying to kind of like...
I'm busy, I'm doing something.
Not... I don't know, it's like that.
I'm okay, I'm all right.
I'm all right. I don't really want to talk to anyone.
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
kind of... And then you just came with this really... and like sometimes in networking, it can be so false and like, oh, what do you do? And all of that stuff. But you just kind of, hi, how are you? Like, it was just really natural, and that has been a really teachable thing for me to kind of not be like that.
Yeah.
So thank you for just saying hello, because it
pleasure.
led to this,
Yeah.
and who knows where else it's going to lead to. But I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for inviting me on your podcast. Really appreciated being here, and hopefully it'll encourage some people.
Definitely. Thank you. So another episode wrapped up. I always say that my guests are amazing, influential, a cultural architect. That is going to be my thing now. But I thank you for listening again. Thank you that you are going to share this with somebody who needs to hear this, and just continue to just work on yourself. That's the thing that I'd encourage you to do. Work on yourself. You can never ever be the finished product. This journey of life requires that we continue to grow, change, evolve. But that means that we have to do it. You've got to do the work. Do the work. That's all I'm asking you. So thank you again. We will be back again next month with another episode, and I look forward to seeing you. Take care. God bless.